This NFL Week 9 Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/SGPN and use code SGPN for a first deposit match up to $100. Roster brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting analytics platform for player props, parlays, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. And plus, the MMA Gambling Podcast just launched their YouTube channel. To celebrate, we're giving away a MMA Gambling Podcast hoodie. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/MMA hoodie for all the details. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Friday, November the 3rd, currently 2:38 on the East Coast. Here to get into our NFL Week 9 player props. And joining me here to help me break it all down, you guys know him as a voice, of course, on the NBA Propcast. With me, it's Chris B. Cabin. Chris, what's going on, my man? How you doing this Friday afternoon?
What's going on? Tons of sports. Like you said, we're back second time today. Discussed the NBA earlier, and we got a lot to talk about in Week 9 of the NFL. So I'm extremely, extremely excited to break it down with you, man. Let's jump right into it,
Yeah, man, just right at the halfway point, I guess we can say, of the regular season already, man. This is crazy already. We'll be about halfway through the NFL season after this week is over. Fortunately, Rod could not join us this afternoon. He's a very busy man, but he'll be back with us next week. So shout out to Rod. But Chris, I'll be honest, man, not a good night for me on Thursday Night Football. Got reverse swept, and man, it was really frustrating because he got off to a really good start for me. Tajay Spears had his first catch for 8 yards. And if I told you he had 4 receptions on the night, you would have probably thought he went over his receiving prop of 15.5. Well, he ended the game with 4 receptions and 4 yards. So that was really frustrating for me. Connor Hayward, the tight end for the Steelers, did have 2 catches, but it only resulted in 16 yards. And then my last player prop was longest completion for Kenny Pickett. He only finished up with a long completion of 32, so fell short by 3 yards there. But did hit Derrick Henry on his anytime touchdown score prop there. I think we like Deontay Johnson to find the end zone as well, if I'm not mistaken. But not a great night for me as far as Thursday Night Football player props win. The touchdown scores salvaged a little bit of it, but how did Thursday Night Football turn out for you?
Man, we always talk about transparency. It was not a great night for me as well. Probably last time I ever bet on Pickett to go. Not Pickett, Pickens to go over on his passing yards. The opportunity set up for a great night for him, but I don't think that he. I think I checked it early. He didn't go over, did he? Let me.
Who was this? I'm sorry.
Double check real quick. The number was the number on Pickett. Yeah, I thought I looked at it last night too. Pickett only had 160 passing yards.
Yeah,
I guess that
was a frustrating part.
Yeah, that was extremely frustrating. So of course I went as the double whammy for me because I was on Pickett and Pickens. And of course, like you said, it was Deontay Johnson who ended up with the receiving yards. So Pickett didn't cash. I was on his over 52.5 receiving. I'm sorry. Pickens didn't cash. I was on over. I needed 209 yards from him. I just said he finished with 160, even against a Tennessee defense that has struggled all year against the pass. And then Pickens also didn't come through. I had him at 52.5 receiving yards, and he finished with one less than we had. So me and you, we watched the game from my couch, and we had 0, and he finished with -1 on 5 targets. So I can't get too much worse than that. I did hit Derrick Henry over his 12.5 receiving yards. I saw he had a couple catches early in that game, which was good. Yeah. And we expected a kind of dink and dunk. So, not a good night at all, but definitely looking to get it back. And we know it's a long season. We have – I think I swept the board last Thursday. And then, of course, this week I get 1. We had a low total. So, yeah, man, got to start looking towards a lot more unders in games, where we only have a total of 36 points.
Yeah, I think that was the case in point last night with a total of 36. But look, some of it was just right there for us on our player props. But live and we learn. We'll move on and try to carry that momentum into the Week 9 player props. But nonetheless, the Steelers do get the job done. They get the victory last night, 20-16 over the Tennessee Titans. The game was a 3-point spread in favor of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They do cover it by 1 point. Get, like I mentioned, the 20-16 victory in a last-minute drive by Kenny Pickett and the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. But much needed victory for them, because we did discuss that AFC North division. All four teams right now are, as it stands currently before Week 8, have a winning record in that division. So every game is going to matter for all these teams, and some big games coming up for some of these opponents in the AFC North, where the Seahawks are visiting the Baltimore Orioles, Baltimore Ravens, and the Cleveland Browns go up against the Arizona Cardinals, and then the Bengals have a big game Sunday night against the Buffalo Bills. So that will be definitely exciting to watch if you're a Bills and a Bengals fan, or even a casual football fan on Sunday night. But Chris, let's dive into our player props here, man. Hopefully we can get the sour taste out of our mouth from Thursday Night Football and pick up some victories and some wins on our prop bets for Week 9. So why don't you lead us off?
Let's do them. So let's start the quarterback position. This was I saw the trade news come out, and I was like, yep, I'm on the over there. So, and I love that I get a super buy low spot. So, of course, for people who don't know, maybe everybody wasn't extremely tuned in. The Commanders did trade away their two of their defensive ends that forced the pressure that you get on the quarterback. So we're going straight to that game. And I'm looking at Mac Jones to go over his passing yards. I know it's not the sexiest play. I know people probably are like, out of all the quarterbacks, is the guy you're going with, Chris? That absolutely is. The number is extremely low, 218.5 passing yards. You can get the number on Bet365. No juice, just -110. And it's for a couple different reasons. Like I said, first of all, in 8 weeks, you look at the Commanders. This team we're not good against the pass. I'm a Commanders fan. We're not good against the pass at all. We've actually allowed 7 of the 8 quarterbacks that we faced to go over this number and throw for at least 219 yards. That's 87.5%. If you want a little bit more, like I talked about, the trade that was actually getting pressure on the quarterback, the trades that were getting pressure on the quarterback are, they salvage. I think it's a kind of throwaway for us now at this point, So I'm a little salty about that, and I want to bet against my Commanders. Just because they did that. Montez Sweat was somebody who, definitely put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Chase Young, same exact way, led the team in sacks, and now both of those guys are gone. You also just look at Mac Jones, going back to Mac Jones just a tad bit. He's been shaky. I think we could all kind of agree on that,
Mm-hmm.
But 3 out of 4 home games, he's actually over this number on the season. The Commanders are allowing 256 back to their defense, 256 passing yards a game. Last 3 games, giving up 287 through the air. Expect Mac Jones to look like a Pro Bowler this week, as he shreds this Washington Commanders defense that was already bad against the pass, but now you have no chance of putting pressure on the quarterback. So yeah, give me Mac Jones to go over his 218.5 passing yards.
I mean, also take a look at some of the opponents that the Patriots have faced this season. I mean, they had Eagles, the Dolphins already twice. They played the Bills. They beat the Bills, the Cowboys. They beat the Jets. So they've had some opponents in there where, I mean, it was a tough uphill climb if your offense wasn't, going to get going. But Mac Jones, I think you're right that this is definitely a buy low spot. And I think we've talked a lot about this Commander secondary of how bad it's been thus far this season. I know a couple of times I've mentioned taking the opposing quarterbacks to go over their longest completion against this Commanders defense. And, that has cashed more times than not thus far this season. But I think this might be an opportunity for Mac Jones. I know they're down Kendrick Bourne, their top number 1 wide receiver in this game, but I think this gives an opportunity for guys like, Jonnu Smith to step up their tight ends in for the New England Patriots here with Hunter Henry, one of the guys there at the tight end position, and it's been a tough uphill climb for this Patriots team, like I mentioned, but again, you have an opportunity for, like you mentioned, what kind of transpired with this Commanders team this offseason, earlier this week, and the trades that they made. That I'm not sure if there's something in the locker room that was going on. I mean, maybe you have more information on that, or maybe it was just they're throwing in the flag or whatever the case might be. But
it was expiring contracts as well. I don't think they were going to be able to bring both of those guys back. When you have the opportunity to potentially contend and you've built your defense throughout the draft,
Yeah.
There's only a short window because of contracts. You're not going to be able to pay everybody, and I think that really what it came down to. So they figured they'd get something in return, which is literally nothing because we got a 3rd round pick. You're not going to find anybody in the 3rd round that's as good as Chase Young. And what we got for Montez Sweat was just a Diet Coke and a bag of Doritos as well, the 25-cent bag. So yeah, not what you should have got back in return. But I'll get off my rant.
I mean, exactly what the Texans got when they traded DeAndre Hopkins to the Arizona Cardinals. So I feel your pain, my man. All right, for my first player prop, I'm going to go over to the game between the Baltimore Ravens and the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks visiting the Baltimore Ravens. And I'm looking at Lamar Jackson's rushing yards in this game, and this number is consensus at 42.5 right now. And you take a look at the the quarterbacks that the Seahawks have faced this season. In guys in quarterbacks that have that scrambling ability, right? So those players or those quarterbacks that the Seahawks have faced have been Mr. Daniel Jones, a guy that we know that can scramble with the football. Josh Dobbs this season has been a revelation at that running quarterback and racking up rushing yards on the ground as far as the quarterback position goes. But it seems like this is a buy low spot based on this number for Lamar Jackson. So those the quarterbacks that I did mention there, Daniel Jones, 10 rushing attempts for 66 yards against the Seahawks back in week 4. Week 7, Josh Dobbs, 7 carries for 43 yards. And even last week, PJ Walker, traditionally, at least thus far in the season at the NFL level, doesn't really utilize his legs. But even last week, he got off 6 attempts for 27 rushing yards. And I know Lamar Jackson, the rushing numbers haven't been there for him this season. But you take a look at when he does scramble with the football, he's definitely going to get over this number, right? And I think that not going over this, only going over this projection 4 games, I think this is a very buy low spot here for Lamar Jackson going up against this Seattle Seahawks defense. So at 42.5, I think he can definitely get over this number. And in the games that he has gotten over this number of 42.5, I mean, he's gone, let's see here, 13 for 62 against the Tennessee Titans, 6 for 45 against the Steelers, 14 for 101 against the Indianapolis Colts, and then 12 for 54 against the Cincinnati Bengals. He got close to it against the Texans in week 1, 6 attempts for 38 yards. So I'm seeing a pattern here that if Lamar Jackson scrambles 5 to 7 times in this game against the Seahawks, I think he gets over this number of 42.5 rushing yards. So a buy low spot here for me, Lamar Jackson over 42.5 rushing yards here, Chris.
Yeah, I think when I think about the script for this game, it tells me that Baltimore is going to run the ball. I mean, they typically do, right? You look at Baltimore, they're always, under Harbaugh, they going to be a rushing team and they're going to lead the league pretty much or be close in attempts, right? You look at them right now, they're rushing the ball 32.4 times per game, which is the second most, like I said, right? But you take a look at Seattle's defense, and we've talked about this before. Their rush defense specifically, they're only giving up 3.6 yards a carry, which is number 3. So if you follow me so far, what I'm thinking is that Seattle will slow down Baltimore's rushing attack, put Lamar Jackson in more pass attempts, and their pass defense hasn't been too bad, which will mean that he'll have more scrambling opportunities, right? Because you're taking away what Baltimore likes to do. They're a very, very balanced team that does like to run the ball just a tad bit more than they like to pass it. But if Lamar Jackson's put in that position, he's definitely going to be able to, scramble out of that and pick up these rushing yards.
Yeah, and this is only obviously a second career game against the Seattle Seahawks, just because they are in different conferences here. But I don't know, worth mentioning or not, but in his only game against the Seahawks back in 2019, 14 attempts for 116 yards on the ground for Lamar Jackson. He did pinch it in for a touchdown as well. All right, Chris, before we continue the conversation here on our player props for NFL Week 9, let me tell everyone about PrizePicks. With PrizePicks, the thing I love about it is that they have pick combo projections across football and basketball. And if you go to their app and you look for that specials league, a league has been specifically created for combo projections. So what do I mean by combo projections here, Chris? Basketball season's underway. Football season's underway. So if we want to talk about LeBron James, we want to talk about Mr. Mr. I was going to say Mr. Taylor Swift. What is Mr. Taylor Swift? Mr. Travis Kelce. We want to take a look at his combo of these two guys on 3-pointers made and receptions. You can do that over on PrizePicks. And if you also want to play along some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill, you can now find also the community plays under the promo tabs of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play. Even if one of your players gets injured for football and basketball games, if you have a player that exits in the first half because of an injury and it doesn't return in the second half, PrizePicks has that player rebooted, meaning that PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform for insurance on injury policy for those players. We'll talk more about our PrizePick entries at the end of this episode, so stay tuned for that. But how do we take advantage of this? Well, go to prizepicks.com/SGPN and make sure to use that code SGPN for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com using promo code SGPN. PrizePicks, fantasy sports made easy. And also, the MMA Gambling Podcast has launched their very own YouTube channel. To support and to celebrate this launch, we are looking at giving away an MMA Gambling Podcast hoodie for their launch. To celebrate, again, giving away that MMA Gambling Podcast hoodie. So all the details to get that free hoodie, go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/MMA hoodie. And again, make sure to subscribe to the MMA Gambling Podcast YouTube channel. All right, Chris, let's get over to our next player props here for the Sunday games. What do you got next for the people?
So we're going to go early morning. Maybe you wake up to this one, depending on how long you sleep for. We got to look at Tyreek in this spot. I haven't bet him this year. I have not bet him this year, but I love him. I love him in this spot. Definitely shop around, get the best number to figure out, where you want to take the odds on this one as well, because the number is a tad bit inflated. I see it as low as 90 and a half on Bet Rivers at -113. So I don't mind paying that juice, but you can get some 91s, 92s as well. Narrative play, of course, which I'm pretty sure you'll mention as well. He's come out, right? He's talked about it, right? we have the quote. It doesn't really matter where we play at, Tyreek says. I mean, obviously, it would be great to play in Kansas City, but it doesn't really matter where we play at. You feel me? They're going to get this work wherever. And I am a firm believer in that as well. I mean, you look at Tyreek, 5 for 8 to this number over this season. Of course, he's playing against Kansas City, first time since he left them as well. Double-digit target in 3 straight games, and I think you would think that Tua Tagovailoa will be looking his way a little bit more versus the old team as well. And you just go in and look at his target, 87, which is the third most in the league, just behind Puka Nacua and Stephon Diggs. I mean, I can't find a reason not to think that Tyreek doesn't get 100 yards. And I know that the Chiefs defense has really been good. I think that they've been better than advertised. Mm-hmm. Only Christian Kirk and Josh Palmer have actually cleared the 91 receiving yards this season. But Tyreek's a tad bit different. And I do think that, he goes over this number. 100-yard week receiving for Tyreek incoming. Give me the over 90 and a half,
Yeah, I think that it's 90 and a half. It's I don't say it's a bad number or a stale number, but when you're looking at 90, you might as well just ladder this up to 100 because that's been the number for Tyreek Hill. And again, everything that you mentioned, I'm not going to regurgitate everything, but the thing that stuck out to me is what we said about what you quoted there about Tyreek Hill, right? And I think that I do expect this game to be one of those games where it's going to be a higher scoring game, right? The total is indicative of that right now, currently sitting around 50.5 to 51.5, but he's on pace for a 2,000 receiving yard season. He said that at the beginning of the season. He's had at least 91 receiving yards in 5 of the 8 games he's played so far this season. Like I mentioned, all 5 of those games, there hasn't been a game where he's between 90 and 99. It's been 100 plus receiving yards in those games. So I think this is a good ladder opportunity. And again, for all the motivation in the world going up against your former team. And if Tyreek Hill says something he's going to do and he's going to put it in this work and put that secondary to work, I 100% believe him. And I think that game plan this week will definitely be trying to slow him down for the Kansas City Chiefs. But I also think that on the other side, Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill will have those plays in store for him to have a big game in this game in Germany against his former team. So right there with you, Tyreek Hill over 90.5 receiving yards here, Chris. So glad we're on agreement about that. So we can move on to our next player prop here. Lead us off.
Let's do it, keep going. We got another big game, NFC East juggernaut type game. We got the Dallas Cowboys traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Dallas will be outside, not in that comfortable $1 billion dome that they have. And I'm a big believer, I try to find me at least one under a week. This week, we're going to the guy I took the over on last week before Dak Prescott looked like he was going to the Hall of Fame and was just, chugging that thing slinging that thing all across the field. I'm looking at Tony Pollard to go under his rushing yards. The number is 53.5, not juice, minus 110 on Bet365. And I talk about this weekly, right? Whether it's, back in that Jacksonville Jaguars defense, which I really, really love. This Philadelphia Eagles rush defense is elite as well. Really, really good. We know that they've been struggling. They can struggle against the pass as well. But going through the numbers, only 2 running backs. They faced 20 running backs this season when you think about starting running backs and backups and, everybody in between. They faced only 2 running backs have actually rushed for more than 50 yards against this team. Brian Robinson being one of them, and it took him 2 chances to do that. You look at Pollard, he's actually likely to see, I would think that he would see less rush attempts here, especially being on the road against this Eagles strong rush defense. I talked about it, but just to put some numbers behind it, teams are rushing the ball just 17.4 times per game, which is actually the least amount in the league against this Philadelphia Eagles defense. You go back and just look at Tony Pollard on the opposite side. He only has 3 games of 54 rushing yards this season so far. And 2 of them actually came in week 1 and week 2 when he got to play against some pretty weak defenses in the Giants. And we know how if you're going to attack the Jets, you typically want to do it on the ground as well. So I think, he definitely stays under the number. Career-wise, he has had a reduced role, of course, because, of course, this is his first year being the feature back, because they had Zeke Elliott being there. But if you just go back and look at his numbers against the Eagles for his career, in 7 games, he's only gone over this number 1 time. He's averaging just 3.6 yards per carry as well. So I like the Eagles to take this game extremely serious because it's going to be a divisional game. They'll be at home as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a believer in making Dak Prescott and Prescott actually beating teams on the road. And I think that the Eagles probably understand that philosophy for the game and the game script. So they make Dak Prescott beat them, which is what we saw when they played the 49ers in San Francisco as well. So give me Tony Pollard and give me this Eagles defense to stop the run and make Dak Prescott beat him. Tony Pollard under his 53.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, I love it, man. I know. I think we've mentioned this in several weeks. I know you've been on the Tony Pollard under train. When we've done our player props for this season, and I think this just goes by game script. Everything that you mentioned, that how well this Eagles rush defense has done this season, and only 2 guys have gotten over this number through about 7 or 8 weeks here against this Eagles front 7. So, and we know the weakness of this Eagles team is that secondary, where, if you look at the numbers of Dak Prescott against the Eagles, he's had success throwing the football against them in his career. You take a look at his last 3 games for Dak Prescott, he's had at least 3 touchdown passes in each of the last 3 games against the Eagles, which kind of just tells me that if this offense is smart for the Dallas Cowboys and their coaches, that they're going to throw the football and probably ignore Tony Pollard at least running the football here. He may be involved in the passing game here for the Dallas Cowboys against the Eagles defense, but I don't think that he's going to have a lot of success running the football here against this Eagles rush defense. So I could not talk you off of it. They are, for a reason, one of the best, if not the best, rush defense in the entire National Football League this season. So this is going to be another game where I feel like it's going to be a lower scoring game where yardage may be hard to come by in this game for both teams, but expect a slow day here for Tony Pollard, at least rushing the football for the Dallas Cowboys. All right, Chris, before I get over to my next player prop, let me tell everyone about Hall of Fame Bets. Win bigger by betting smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame Bets, a sports betting analytics platform for player props, game lines, and parlays. Enter any parlay idea into Hall of Fame Best Revolutionary Parlay Optimizer tool to get hit rates broken down by leg, as well as an expected probability for the entire parlay. Sort all players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which picks have value. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame Bets. All right, Chris, let me get over to my next player prop, and I'm going to go over to the game between the I don't know which one I want to say for my best bet because I really like both of these. You know what? Let's go with the guy that I've talked a lot about on the pod here, and I'll save one of those as my best bets. Rachaad White. I'll switch it up here. I like his over on his receiving yards in this game. And if you take a look at what the Texans defense is giving up to the running back position through the air, I'll put the numbers out there for you. So since week 3, the running back, either as a collective group, have gone over this projection of 27.5 receiving yards, or individual running backs have gone over this projection. So Travis Etienne in that game, the Texans won in Jacksonville. In that game, Travis Etienne had 50 receiving yards. Najee Harris, 32 receiving yards against his Texans team. Falcons as a running back group, when we talk about guys like Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, they had 47 receiving yards against his Texans. Alvin Kamara, 36 receiving yards. Last week, the Panthers as a collective group, Chuba Hubbard, and then I forgot the name of the other running back that they had. Each of those guys had 26 receiving yards against his Texans pass defense, at least against the running back position. They combined for 52. Look, you took a look at Rachaad White. He's had a total of 23 targets this season, 22 receptions off of those 23 targets. He's gone over this projection in each of the last 2 weeks for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think, number one, that I think this trend is going to continue of the Texans running backs giving up this receiving yards to their running back position. But also, I think for Baker Mayfield and his offense that they're starting to rely on the running backs as well to maybe get Baker Mayfield out of those times where he is getting pressured and just dump it down to a guy like Rachaad White, because he's been able to, at least over the last 2 weeks, make something out of nothing and get those receptions on those targets as he received. From Baker Mayfield. So again, I think we'll look at this next week, Chris, that if he does get over this number, I would not be surprised that next week when we're looking at this prop, that this may be bumped up to around 30.5, maybe more than that. So maybe another prop that the market has not caught up on, Rachaad White. I believe last week I was on this as well, 27, or I think either you or Rod were on this as well, and I played this as well. But Rachaad White over 27.5 receiving yards here against the Texans here this week here, Chris.
Yeah, you mentioned him. I think this is just something that the books haven't really caught up with yet, and you do want to protect Baker as much as you possibly can here. He sailed over this number in the last 2 weeks, and the matchup just kind of jumps out at you. 70 and 65 in the last 2 weeks against much better pass catching defenses. So I can only look towards the over in this spot as well. Looks like Baker is really relying upon him a lot when we think about running backs who finish with 6+ receptions, and their name is in Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Chris. So that's 3 player props each. We have a best bet left, and then we'll also do our touchdown score prop bets here. So let's do our touchdown scores here for this week, and then we will do our best bets to wrap up this episode here. So let's get to our touchdown scores. I think you and I may just agree on Tyreek Hill this week to find the end zone, but I think he might
absolutely.
I think he's at a minus price, if I'm not mistaken here, Chris.
Minus 115, is what I saw.
Yeah.
Minus 115.
All right. Let's get spicy with it. Let's just take it up to, I'm going to get on the minus 115. But I'm going to put faith in him to find the end zone twice. That's at 5-1 right now for him to find the end zone twice. Again, you read the quotes off. You and I both agree about his receiving yards to go over. Won't be surprised if he's able to break the top off of this Chiefs defense, who has been pretty good this season. But I think this is an opportunity for Tyreek Hill to have a monster game out there in Germany early. So I think a lot of people will be up for this game. 2 6-2 teams in the AFC. Tyreek Hill, the narrative is there going up against his former team. We'll get down on him for anytime touchdown at minus, and I'm going to go up to 2+ touchdowns at 5-1 here, Chris. What else do you think about? Nice. What do you think about this? And what else do you got?
I love the Tyreek Hill double. I mean, I need to see backflip, front flips, cartwheels, all of that this week in the end zone. So I like the Tyreek Hill look for sure. Of course, I also like Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews sees the end zone just because. You got Mark Andrews as well?
I do.
Mark Andrews, I like him a lot, just because I think Seattle, you want to attack them through the air. We just talked about how good their rush defense is, and I think we see Lamar attack through the middle of the field, and I think that's where
Yeah.
you'll see the biggest differential between Seattle's pass defense against their rush defense. So I really like Mark Andrews to get in the end zone. I think he's a tad bit slept on. I know I talked about him during the preview show at the beginning of the season.
Mhm.
Rashad White, I know you just mentioned it, but your Texans are giving up a touchdown on the ground per week, which is 26th in the league. So I like him to be able to touch the end zone. And then last but not least, Kyle Pitts. I like Pitts a lot this week, just because he finally gets a competent quarterback. I mean, Tyler Heineke's not going to blow you away at all, but I do think that he's going to, look for his tight end. I know him being in Washington was, a time where he really utilized the tight end. And for Kyle Pitts, it has to be a relief. I mean, we're talking about a tight end who we all thought had, the potential to be pretty elite in this league. And unfortunately for him, he's been with a, pretty incompetent quarterback throughout. I think it's pretty telling that Desmond Ridder is healthy, but they're not going to start him because Atlanta has been able to muster up some wins, and they're looking to go with Taylor Heinicke. So I like Heinicke a lot this week, and I do think that he finds Pitts. Pitts is due for some positive regression. New tight end at the crib this week. I like Kyle Pitts to score this week as well.
Yeah, I can't argue against that. Again, I think it's been the year of tight ends for sure. At least on not only our show here, the Propcast, but also I know the guys with Sean and Ryan, they've talked a lot about tight ends as well. So one more I'll throw at you here, Chris, before we get it over to best bets. Puka Nacua just popped up on the injury report. He's listed officially as questionable. So if you are watching live or you can get to this, I think Cooper Kupp obviously is going to be that guy. I know Matthew Stafford is also questionable for this game, but if Puka Nacua is not able to go, I see a plus 165 right now for Cooper Kupp to find the end zone. I know they're going to be in Lambeau Field in Green Bay this week, going up against the Green Bay Packers. But I think even if it is Stafford or if it's their backup quarterback, I think this is a good spot here for Cooper Kupp to get loose and find the end zone. So anytime you're giving me a plus 165, anything north of plus 150 for Cooper Kupp, I'm definitely going to get behind that, especially with how great Puka Nacua has been this season for the Rams, who just popped up questionable on the injury report for the Rams. So I'll take Cooper Kupp to find the end zone plus 165. Anyone else, Chris, for touchdown scores?
Nah, I think the ones that I gave out, like I said, I really like Rashad White to be able to get in, Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, and of course we both agree on Tyreek Hill. I'm gonna tell you on
Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp. I don't know why I couldn't think of his name. He's on my fantasy team, so that'd be a double win for me.
There you go.
I need him this week a lot, and Green Bay defense just hasn't been great at all. Like I thought it would have been a tad bit better. And they absolutely got embarrassed. So I do expect them to bounce back. We know that the Cowboys put up pretty much 150 points in the first half and kept scoring in the second half as well. So I do think they'll dominate the time of possession and they get a favorable matchup against Jordan Love. So we should see a bunch of the Rams offense being on the field and, taking advantage of a secondary that's not too bad, but we know Cooper Kupp is pretty elite wide receiver. So really like him a lot this week,
I'll throw one more out there just because I think it's a little bit of a change of a scenery with the head coaching change and maybe a different game plan coming in. And maybe this might be the week we're waiting for the Davante Adams breakout game. But Davante Adams is listed at plus 160, 155 against the Giants. They're hosting the Giants in Vegas there. I think this might just be the game. And I saw the press conference with Davante Adams and saying that he's ready to run through a wall for Antonio Pierce now being the head coach. And I mean, he did mention nothing to take away from what Josh McDaniels was able to do. But I think when you have a coach that is a former player, and I think that really, resonates with the team, I think that this might be a big week. And I think that they'll definitely draw up a plan here for Davante Adams to be heavily involved. And maybe Aiden O'Connell is able to really not miss a wide open Davante Adams twice like he did last week did Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think Davante Adams at plus 155. My fantasy team could definitely use that as well. All right, Chris, let's wrap it up with best bets here for the Propcast for our NFL Week 9 player props. Give me your best bet. What do you got?
Man, I really fell in love with all of the ones that I played, but I think we got to go Tyreek. I love it because it's early in the morning. I love it because we get the discount. It felt like I thought this line would be 94.5, 95.5, but like you said, maybe you skip over the 90.5 and you just put them at 100 so you can get you some plus money. It's probably not a lot, but I do like that number a lot for Tyreek. Already talked about the narrative. They're going to get this work. And that means, we're going to get this paper because we're going to cash on Tyreek Hill this week to get 100 plus receiving yards. But, wherever you want to take the number at, I think it's really that simple. So give me Tyreek Hill, 100 yards receiving, over 90.5 if you want to play it safe. Bet both if you want and, distribute your units appropriately. But yeah, give me Tyreek, best bet over receiving yard.
90 plus, obviously the 90.5 is at minus 110, minus 115 at most books consensus. 100 plus on DraftKings right now, plus 120. 110 is at plus 165. 120 plus is at plus 235. So yeah, I think the books are always expecting a big day from Tyreek Hill going up against his former team in Germany there. For my best bet, I'm going to go with a guy I've talked a lot about on this podcast, and dude is just continues the ball out. Adam Thielen, over 70.5 receiving yards. And if you're listening to this early, and if you're watching live, FanDuel right now has this at 65.5, where everybody else has it at 70.5. So if you have access to FanDuel, get over there and bet it right now before that number moves. It's at 65.5. But since consensus right now is at 70.5, I'll give it out at 70.5. And it's just, again, we talked about the targets for a lot of the receivers throughout this season. We've talked about on the Propcast here, Chris. So Thielen continues to be that number one wide receiver for this Panthers offense and the output he's putting out this season. So Thielen by far leads the Panthers in targets with 70. I think it's 70. Yeah, 70 this season. The next closest guy, a receiver or a tight end, doesn't even have half of what Adam Thielen has as far as targets. And that kind of tells you where Bryce Young and Adam Thielen are at. So additionally, Adam Thielen has gone over this projection of 70.5 in 5 straight games for the Panthers. And he's been in double-digit targets in 4 of the last 5 weeks. So I think for me, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. Adam Thielen, over 70.5 receiving yards. And again, like I mentioned, that's 65. So go bet it. But again, I'll give it out a consensus number at most books right now. It is at 70.5 for Adam Thielen. So best bet for me here, Chris, Adam Thielen over 70.5.
Yeah, I'm looking at the numbers right now. There's no way I could talk you off of this one either. They're giving it up. I talked about, I think me and you might have talked about this. We did. We talked about it on Sunday, and I told you, Gardner Minshew is kind of slept on, and you get those low totals, and lo and behold, that total flew over. You can't trust this Colts defense, specifically on the road. And you mentioned the connection that these two have. I'm not sure what it is, but you would think that the defenses would pick up on it. They just haven't. And Thielen's actually looking like he is almost back in Minnesota, even with this offense struggling. I know they got their first win the other day, so that's a box check. But pretty sure they want to taste a little bit more of that success, and I would only be able to play him, over on this number as well. If I like it a lot.
Yep, there we go. All right, best bets in the books there for myself and Chris. Tyreek Hill, we have 200% agreement on. Should be a big week for him in Germany going up against his former team. And I'll take Adam Thielen over 70.5 receiving yards as my best bet. All right, that's going to wrap it up for the NFL Week 9 Player Props edition on the Propcast here. Chris, anything else you want to mention, my man, before we get out of here?
Nah, man, enjoy the games. Definitely set that alarm, if you need to, because daylight saving time is coming up. I'm not sure when it is. Totally.
I think it's this Sunday, isn't it?
Is it this Sunday? I know it's coming up here soon. But definitely, set those alarm clocks so you don't miss this game. You don't miss Tyreek Hill. And that should be a good game in Germany. It starts at 9:30 Eastern time. So, bet responsibly, like I always say, man. Enjoy the games. Continue to grind it out as me and Munaf are doing, and definitely check me out over on Twitter. Myself and Munaf are doing a lot of different work at this time. We got NBA, we got NFL, and it's a daily grind. So check me out over on Twitter. Crispy Captain 2 P's 2 N's. Best of luck to everybody this weekend. and let's get some cash, man. Let's cash some tickets.
Yeah, hopefully we bounce back after what wasn't a great night for us on Thursday Night Football. But I love the bets that we put out here as far as our player props for NFL Week 9. All right, we'll be back next week for Thursday Night Football. Look out for us then. Make sure to follow Chris, like you mentioned, on Twitter at CrispyCaptain, 2Ps2Ns. Follow me on X/Twitter at SportsNerd824. More importantly, make sure you subscribe to the NFL Gambling Podcast YouTube channel. If you haven't already, leave us a rating and review if you haven't done so already. All right. Talk to you guys next week. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.